What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Alex here from AlexCFV, and today we have another topic to discuss. Kind of my favorite almost aspect to approach this game in a way. We're basically talking about value decks. So I like to stay away from the term budget because budget kind of locks you into something at, almost like a price range or kind of like a hard cap, which I do in this over here in this video. But what I am kind of doing is kind of presenting the value scale. So something might be a little bit more expensive, but if it's worth it, if the value is there, that to me is worth it to go ahead and buy it. So value is what you get, price is what you pay. Sometimes you can pay a very cheap price, but it's just not worth it to really even play or attempt to. So all of these decks that I'm going to be giving you in this video today are going to be linked down in the description. You can go check them out if you want to. I would suggest just not spoiling it for yourself. Maybe watch the video. It definitely helps me out with the watch time and whatnot, but definitely are down below if you need to go and use these lists. Big shouts out to Kay, a player from New York City. You guys, I'll link his Twitter down below too. Awesome player, super nice guy. He really helped me go through tons of players, helped me cultivate this list. I've been asking all over, but I feel like he's really helped me land at a lot of different spots with these lists. So thank you, a huge shout out to Kay, first and foremost. But over here, none of these decks are going to surpass a $100 budget, so you can go, if you have that kind of budget, that's absolutely fine, go for it. There are some that come closer to that $50 range, some that are a little bit closer to that $100, but I believe that the value is there for those. And I did release a poll a couple weeks back where the majority, I think 60 something percent of you out of almost 200 votes kind of said that $50 to $100 is what you consider to be budget. So that's kind of where I've landed at. It's unfortunate we can't do it for a little bit less. Some V decks you can get away with that, but unfortunately the way it is right now, just can't do it really in standard. So, or at least making it worth it. You definitely can, but to have a playable deck, it's just not super possible. So let's start right off. First and foremost, gonna get right into it over here. And at number 5, a little bit closer to that $100 mark, I have actually Hexorb Sorceress. So Hexorb has been around since set 1, but it has received some new support in the form of its boss monster over here. Hexorb is essentially focusing big time on rigging your deck in order to hit triggers, gaining benefits off of hitting those triggers in general. I personally really like just riding up, getting knowing what's on the top 2 of my deck. This game is largely, or this format at least, is largely based around triggers, and in a game where like 5k shields are super prevalent, it's just hitting triggers is a really big deal. Now overall, you will notice in this deck there are some cards that are still on surface level expensive, but I will go into some super budget alternatives if you guys did want to take those out and just become even more approachable in terms of price range for this deck. You'll also notice there are no Regalia Piece, and there's no Elementaria Sanctitude. It just is what it is. We cannot afford to have that in this price range. They're $20 plus kind of cards. The Regalia's pieces are all over their different prices. If you want to work up and build towards that, I can kind of show you what to take out, but overall I don't feel like it really impacts the strategy of this deck, and we don't need it to actually be successful. I feel very happy with this list overall. This is pretty much without the triggers, the upgraded triggers, without those pieces. This is still pretty much like a full power Hexorb deck. There are many different ways you can build this, but this one basically just, like I said, focuses on kind of stacking up the top of your deck. You do that in multiple different ways, obviously through the ride line over here with the grade 2, the grade 1 I believe also does. Octary Sorceress, again, this is one of the more expensive cards. A lot of other cards kind of do halfway what this one does, but it's really worth it to kind of invest into this one. If you don't really want to, again, I'll show you the alternates, but very powerful card, allowing you to kind of rig the top of your deck, put stuff into your hand, maybe gain those key pieces. There are also resource kind of engines over here that allow you to kind of soul charge, because you will be soul blasting out for your Vanguard, which is basically when a trigger is revealed on your drive check, you get to soul blast 1 and restand a unit. So that is 5 attacks on your turn, which is really actually crazy, especially if you are going first. I feel like you have pretty good pace in this deck, and this deck, along with all of its support at this point, is pretty mature. I feel like it is actually at full power, kind of like a 1.5 kind of tier deck. At this right over here, it's like right under that pretty much. But the value you get from the replenishment angel, the draw engine over here off of the dragon tree wretch, which also kind of fluctuates in price. Again, I can't control if the market goes up and down after posting this video, but as I priced it out, this is under $100. You are focusing on just rigging your deck, hitting those triggers, restanding your rear guards, smashing your opponent's face-ins with beautiful columns, and I think that the way I priced it out, this was still able to be fit into the deck. And this is one of the Cray Elementals, so this is actually a really great investment overall, because you can bring this into other decks, because this fits in every single clan. This is not just locked to Keter. As you can see, all these other cards have the Keter Sanctuary over here. So if you are new to the game, that is just a solid investment overall. Yeah, so some other budget things that you can take out. I like to play with this a little bit. I was trying this in one of my earlier builds. It really wasn't too bad if you know that you have like a dud on the top of the deck. But this basically allows you to, when placed on Guardian Circle, kind of look at the top, put it on the top or bottom. Next up over here too, I know some people actually swear by this card. A little bit slower. This is definitely like a second grade 3 kind of ride over here, kind of play. But in your back row rearguard circle, once per turn, when your other unit stands by a card effect, you get to stand this unit too. And if you did Persona Ride, this over here, like, it gets boost, so that's making an insane column. An extra 13k boosting twice is pretty significant in this game, and like I said, this is a super cheap card. Over here too, if you are going to play the next card I'm going to show you, you might want to consider swapping some of the stuff in over here. Some of this in basically just when it boosts, we get to Soul Charge 1, Magic of Purification, Fipuri, I think that, yeah, that's how to say it. And then lastly, if you can't afford the, or I shouldn't say that, if you find that you don't want to spend the money on maybe some of the other cards over here, you can go with this promo card too, but it is a Soul Blast too, which is why I kind of suggested maybe running the grade 1 as well. So you get to countercharge 1 and draw a card after that. So again, solid target overall, not too bad. Lastly, over here for Hexorb, I also I personally like to tech in 1 extra Hexorb Sorceress. If this was a budget deck and I needed to, like, instead of having an extra Regalia's piece, maybe I'd find room to do this. I'm not saying that you have to, but it could be interesting, and especially for like a more budget-oriented list, this could be a very good option. Next up over here, I'm gonna tell you guys, just, you know, slow your brakes. You're gonna tell me, no, this isn't budget. Yes, it is. This is under $100. I guarantee you, this build of it is. So this is the 1 Gandiva. There is only 1 Gandiva in this build right over here. So this is the menace that's actually tearing up the meta at the moment, in English at least. And all of its support came out in this set, so there is really no old support. Most of this is actually, there is one with Brachio over here, but most of this is just super cheap overall, with the exception of maybe the double rare right here, and the other, I think this is a rare over here. Yeah, that's pretty cheap, but this is like the only more expensive card in this. Gandiva himself is $13, but once you do that, everything else is fairly cheap. Again, we're running the vanilla PGs, just have to do it. Dragon Empire has not received like a special set or anything like that that has given like additional reprints to the Overtrigger, and the Overtrigger still remains super expensive. So with that in mind, we are actually still running the vanilla one, which is fine. Like, I still think it's, you know, 100 million 2 different spots, still really good. What Gandiva really focuses on is outvaluing your opponent and kind of out pressuring them through the long game. This whole deck allows you to do that by retiring your opponent's resources on the field, as well as kind of binding your own in order to give your units more power. So throughout the game, you kind of experience like a Persona Ride like level of power just naturally, which, you know, it is ideal to obviously run more Gandivas, but you can get away with one 100%. The only older card over here is the Brachio Force, which basically puts a little on-hit pressure on, forcing your opponent to guard early, which is nice, potentially retiring something else from your opponent's field, in culmination with another very cheap card. This was expensive for a bit, it kind of like fluctuated, but it's definitely settled now over here. But Best Harvest, basically when something is retired in the main phase on your opponent's turn, you are able to then just draw a little bit more. So again, huge value engine. The whole ride line is all oriented around value, making sure that you can't get counter starved out with the grade 2. You know, you don't have to discard to ride. I think it's on the grade 1 at some point. I'm just talking off the top right here, so I'm not 100%, but you know, this is a fairly cheap deck, all things considered, for something that is super close to tier 1 power. So these 2 decks, I might say, are very powerful. They're not built ideal, and they're a little bit more expensive, so that's why I kind of put them on the 4 and 5 category on this list, just because, you know, it is a little bit more to ask you to spend, you know, $13 on a single card or whatever the case may be. So Overall, this is a super solid list. And then, oh yeah, just to explain, anybody who has the list, this is the new inclusion that typically isn't included in the main list. This is taken out for the Persona rides, but this is going to be the Crimson Scale Sword, Maestro Bernala, something like that. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted if any player's rearguard was retired this turn. You get to bind this face down and draw a card, so your draw engine is still pretty much there. You're still like lasting throughout the game to kind of gain and really capitalize off of Gandiva's like true long game potential. So very, very good list. There are no other alternate upgrades for this. Like, this list is pretty set. It is what it is. Again, I don't think I priced this out, it was under $100, so I don't think it should kind of pierce that. Next up over here too, something that I played a little bit of, but I actually value decently well right now for something that is as cheap as it is. So this is going to be Archite. Archite came out, I think, 2 or 3 sets ago. It's our only, it's our first Brandgate at least list on this over here, or deck on this list, I'm sorry. But Brandgate, this Archite is faced basically a tribal monster deck. If anything has like the name monster in it, it becomes part of the strategy and enables them to multi-attack off of it, gain resources. This deck is kind of like a jack of all trades, so to speak. So you are able to afford 4 Persona rides in this one over here, which is really nice. This card actually came down to the wavy loss. So if you know, I think they're around the $4 to $5 price range. And if we are considering that $100 to be our limit, this is definitely within that. Ironically enough, the PGs for them actually have monster in them, and it is correct. In the optimal build, honestly, to run the monsters, this is pretty much as optimal as it's going to get, outside of like, again, the Regalius piece, or maybe like the other the Elementary Sanctitude and whatnot, the other order. So overall, what your strategy is just to kind of thin your deck throughout. Everything in this deck thins each other out pretty much. What you want to do with this order over here, you're focusing on putting this order into your order zone, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, choose 2 cards with monster in the card name from among them, put 1 into your hand, 1 into your drop, and then you're basically calling things from the drop. So act on order zone, you rest this card, and again, if you have 3 of these, 4 of these in there, you can do this for every single one. Choose a card with monster in this card name from your drop and put it into your order zone. You can then call them down with the Archite later. So you get multi-attack in here, you get columns that just kind of make themselves a little bit more powerful. You get a little bit of retire as well, and just like a ton of deck thinning. So I feel like this deck for the price definitely does a whole lot and is pretty competitive. I definitely would have no problem playing like this exact list at my locals, even a little bit more beyond, to be honest. So I just think for the price, this might not be better than the 2 decks. I feel like all 3 decks that I've shown so far are very similar. I just feel like this does a whole lot, has potential in the future to like remain budget, whereas the other 2, you know, cards could come out that really set them over the top. Like, this is almost max power as is, and you don't need to maybe invest in something that like the other 2 decks need in order to make them like truly like max power. Ironically enough too, I think this is correct in this current meta right now for the set 11 or set 10 really. Or the Festival Collection one, but this is a monster card that's not typically kind of played, but when this guy boosts, just gets an extra 2k. Right now I really value aggression. This deck like hits the gas and is just super consistent off the bat, and I think that the 10k booster is more worth it than Bobamine. So that is what you can swap out. There is one other card that has truly come down in price. It used to be like a $10 card, just super necessary in every single Brandgate kind of strategy, but we see that it's now like $1. It's been reprinted in, what was it, the Festival Collection, Dragon Tree Invasion. It was a special reprint, and then boom, like the original one's still like $1.79. So if you focus more on, if you think that it's a meta where, you know, you're going to get counter starved out, like this is a better play for sure. But right now aggression kind of reigns supreme, and I think that, you know, just even this deck kind of takes that into consideration. Hexor very aggressive, Gandiva very aggressive, like Archite same kind of deal. So I feel like that 10k is a little bit more worth it, and it's just a cheaper card overall. So yeah, coming right into our budget. Next up here, I know what you're gonna say too, like this right off the bat, oh no, this might be a little bit too over. You can purchase, yes, one of these deck sets for around, I think it's like the $70 price range. This is for everybody who's new. This actually came out in like a special series where they gave you pretty much the completed deck out of the box. There are a couple upgrades over here that I do want to go over, but I would refrain from purchasing it straight up out of that box and actually go to TCG Player and look at the commons. The commons for this deck are insanely cheap. Like, a lot of people want the grade 1 for premium reasons. For us, we only need 1 copy of it. Now, this card alone is around that $25 price range, but everything else in the deck truly is cheap. I think when I priced this whole thing out, it came close to like the $70, a little bit like mid 70s kind of, something like that. So it is very, very cheap as is. And this is a high tier deck. Like, this is pretty much, with the exception of 1 card, pretty much max power. And again, you know, we don't have the Regalias piece, and we don't have the Elementari. I feel like a broken record saying that over and over, but for the cards typically within the deck there, this is almost full power. As is, you're essentially kind of outgrinding your opponent again, almost like Gandiva, but there's a different way to kind of get to it. So a lot of these cards on call basically draw. The Gungrum over here is a Soul Blast 3 draw. The GGs over here, when they're called down, you get the Soul Blast 2 draw a card. And you essentially want to spam these down and rush your opponent. This is one of the decks that can kind of keep up with like a really aggressive early game in order to kind of transition into the late game and still kind of win. You want to apply pressure and just draw. Again, when discarded for Stride, you draw. You're basically drawing your advantage, just pushing your advantage, getting that engine going throughout the game. There is a 1 card out of this set that is kind of new. That's going to be Steam Scar Zargon. Basically replenishes your soul so you can keep that draw engine going. This is the only card that's not included in the deck set, I believe. Just kind of doing it a 1-over. Oh yeah, these are also cheaper than the in-theme ones. So again, these are vanilla ones. You can upgrade these to the real ones if you wanted to for the PGs, but the trial deck ones work absolutely fine. This over here has been reprinted, I think, twice now, 2 or 3. Well, it has all the regular printings plus the special set printing, so it's really not too expensive. And I think in the strategy, it definitely is worth it to have this Dark States OT. So that is money well spent. Again, OTs can transfer to decks. You know, this is within only Dark States, but still very, very worth it to at least have 1 of each as your collection kind of grows. And you don't personalize, so you don't need 3 copies. But again, go look at the common versions of these over here. Your G Zone as well. Get the common or the you know, the non-SP foiling kind of rares on this. What you're essentially doing later into the game is striding into this. So this is a new mechanic that they introduced to standard that has been around in premium and G format for a while, like way back. So you need to be on grade 3, your opponent needs to be on grade 3, or you need to have been on a grade 3 for an entire turn, and then you can discard something with the sum of the grades 3 or greater in order to stride or go into like this extra deck to go and get these. So typically your first one is always going to be the Fate Rider. Fate Rider allows you to gain power, gain advantage, triple drive. All of these guys, by the way, the 2 in the G Zone kind of have that. They have the triple drive, so you're always drive checking 3 times instead of 2. They basically take on the power of your Vanguard as well as its own base power, so you have very powerful units swinging. Just a lot of pressure. This guy is the multi-attack one that gives you power, gets your engine going a little bit more with the on-call draws that you're basically in a spam from that. The grade 2 over here also helps you kind of spam into that multi-attack and kind of get things to the back row. Very, very effective. And then typically the way in this format you're closing out is going to be on the Chrono Dragon next stage. You basically swing with this guy, and then you're going to go back into your Vanguard here, and then you counterblast 1, and oh no, when this unit attacks Vanguard, this guy then gets an extra 5k. Your opponent cannot call Sentinel, so you get a Sentinel restrict. You're basically swinging twice with the Vanguard, putting a lot of pressure through. And again, you're building up. I know it doesn't show it here, but there's a crest that the grade 1 gets you. Don't forget that. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. But go get the crest over here. It'll allow you to kind of, for every unit, face up in your G Zone at the end of turn. You know, you flip these up, you leave them back. There's other videos explaining rules and whatnot, but this is more of a build, I guess, oriented thing. But you basically get an additional 5k for every single, I think it's 5k, yeah, for every G guard, or no, every G unit in your G Zone. So really, really solid deck. I think this is a very high tier deck, even as built right here. Like, the most optimal version of it, yes, is like a tiny bit more like different, but I feel like the value of playing this is just immense. Like, you're not that far off from the most optimal build with this, so you can definitely compete at pretty much any level with this. I 100% think that. And if you don't want to spring for the Gungrooms, because I still think they're like $3 or so, a way to make this even cheaper and kind of switch up some of the playability of this deck is getting into this grade 1 over here. So this was reprinted in the festival booster. So when this guy is placed on rearguard circle, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, choose a card from them, put them into soul, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck. So you're still soul charging, which is a huge function of Gungroom himself, but you're also rigging the top now. In a game, like I said, of 5k shields, knowing that there's a trigger on top could either A, defensively save you, or like B, just put you in the driver's seat, kind of pushing your opponent forward. The last list, number one on this over here. Before we get to that, I just want to ask you guys that if you are enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like on the video, possibly consider subscribing to the channel. I plan on doing one of these for V Premium as well as Premium, maybe not 5 for Premium because it's a little bit tougher, but I'm kind of waiting for History Collection to come out for that. So let me know if you guys are enjoying it down in the comments below, and any list that I might have missed or you don't agree with my list, whatever it is, just let me know. But number one over here is Messiah. So I don't think it's any surprise. This one is pretty much pure, almost pure out of the box. This is an insane value. You can get this deck for like, I think it's like $40. All you do is swap out into four additional crit triggers. Just find them anywhere, super cheap for $1 each or whatever. And then at that price point, like, I definitely would suggest kind of upping the front trigger to the effect ones. Getting that additional 5k shield is huge in a deck that A, multi-attacks like crazy, B, gains value based on how many cards you locked and Soul Blast out at the end of your turn, and just has this overwhelming presence again with the crest. So same deal with the grade 1 over here. It goes and gets the crest as soon as it's written, gets you card advantage, gets you that crest, gets you that overall kind of just advantage as the game goes on. The more G units you flip, again, same kind of thing. You go into one G unit first, you go into the second one afterwards. It's really all about multi-attacking and just getting off like a fury of attacks and just pressuring your opponent with these huge columns. Triple driving is always great. Now, if you really want to, you could technically put in another Elementary Sanctitude. I just say play it out of the box like it is, except for those 2 little changes. You could also upgrade something over here with the grade 1 slot, but it's for the price that card is right now. It's like a Makani grade 1. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. It really isn't. I think this is absolutely fine for somebody who's either A, getting into the game, or just wants to, again, be super value oriented. And that's like the reason this is number one, just because for $45, effectively, let's call it 55 with shipping, tax, whatever it is, like, you're all in and you have a deck you can literally roll up to a regional with, and in the right hands of the right player, like, you can legitimately expect to win. So this is an unprecedented value that Vanguard has not really seen before. This one, unlike Chronojet, I would suggest actually just buying the set. You get your shinies out of it, that's fine. This is still, I think, a fairly expensive grade 1 just because it does something in Premium. Won't really get into it, but getting that crest is important. I don't think there has been a time before where, like, you've been able to say, okay, spend $50, get a meta deck. Like, maybe with the MLB set, but I think that was like a little more expensive, and maybe some of the old legend decks, but can't really speak to that off the top of my head. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you guys have any comments down below, any questions. If you want to check out some dirt cheap budget decks, I plan on putting a couple as shorts on my channel. I already have a Solryron one up, and again, that's like, I think it's under $40 for that one. It's definitely playable. So I'm super, again, excited to do budget content. This is really like the bread and butter that I started off with on the channel, and I don't want to make it seem like I'm harping on anything and really coming out with like negative opinions or anything like that, as I did kind of in my past video. So I'm never afraid to speak about a topic when I think it should be addressed, but at the same time, I feel like credit is always due where it's credit needs to be given where it's due, and to have this product out there is really great. So reprints and everything aside, the state of the game, the market in general, I feel like this is a great value, and any of these decks on this list will be under $100 and get you solidly into the game with a very competitive deck. So again, thank you guys. Let me know if you need anything else. This is Alex from AlexCFV signing out.